Hey, welcome to Being Creative. My name is Rick Leaf, as you know, because I'm the host of this show. In today's episode, you're going to be excited about this, probably as much as me. This episode is about 3 epiphanies about the power of art, the power of sport, and the value of a dream. Now, I love sports. I do love sports, but I was going to say I love stories, and I know you do too. So, without further ado, I suggest that we jump straight into story time. Oh, and in case I haven't told you recently, I'm glad you're here. The power of art. And this is like, for me, the difference between having a voice and finding a language. I do these slam poetry workshops in schools. And I often say to students, you know, babies have a voice. Babies cry. But as parents, you're usually sitting there going, what does it mean? You know, are they hungry? Are they tired? Do they need to be changed? Are they just in a grumpy mood? Are they sick? You're trying to decipher what this noise means when a person just has a voice. But man, you develop a language, that's when you find personal power. You can advocate for yourself. You can articulate your thoughts and ideas. You can persuade and share nuanced ideas. And that, to me, is the power of art. And let's start there in this episode. Like as a songwriter and a slam poet, I've always been aware of that power that language gives me to make people feel something. Like Maya Angelou said, you know, they'll forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And that's one of the things about, you know, you find your language. And if you are able to communicate your thoughts and ideas in a way that makes people see what you see and feel what you feel, well, there's power in that. And there's power in being a storyteller in that. Stories and storytelling is probably, in my humble opinion, one of the most powerful languages. However you go about that, whatever that looks like for you, but a great storyteller that can make you feel what they're feeling, man, that's something, you know? That's real power. And, you know, I think beyond that, whatever we want to call it, the personal power, the personal voice, you know, artists and actors and musicians and producers and directors, many of us search for opportunities to be part of a band or an ensemble or a cast so that we can be part of creating something bigger and better than we could be on our own. And this epiphany about art that I feel like I had years ago is definitely rooted in my own experience. And I am definitely going to circle back around to it in a bit. But I just, because that's where it starts for me, that's where this episode one starts. But I want to move on to the second epiphany that I've had in the last couple of years about the power of sport. To begin this little section about the power of sport, I am going to just grab a snippet of an interview I had with Shade Berkeley when I was in Graz, Austria last summer. I was interviewing her as the head coach for Team Canada Women's. She also plays here in Canada for Valkyrie. She had such a great little section, so we're just going to jump in to this conversation that I had with her for the upcoming documentary. It must be wild for you guys that have been a part of this sport for, you're talking like 8 years.
Yeah.
To see the evolution, like that opening ceremony was beyond what I thought.
Yeah, that opening ceremony is I've been saying this ever since it happened. That was the biggest opening ceremonies, the loudest, the most exciting opening ceremonies that I've ever been a part of.
Right.
by far and away, like
Right.
no contest.
No, it's huge. For me, I was like, we showed up a bit late.
Yeah.
And I was like, the guy wasn't going to let us in because I didn't have the wristband.
Oh,
and Riel
no.
has the wristband. And I'm like, I got the wristband, but Canada's about to start parading. And he's like, you need the band. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll give you money, but I got to get in there to film. And so
Like,
he's
I've got equipment. Look,
Yeah.
I'm media, I
and
swear.
so he said, okay, go film, but make sure you come back out
Yeah.
and whatever. But then I got down there, and then all the country after country.
Yeah.
And I was like, for me, I was like, oh, this is how this documentary starts.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
This is the scope of the story. Look at this, from Ivory Coast to Argentina and I love that everybody was cheering for each other, that's how this competitive
Absolutely.
event
Yeah.
started with this celebration. Oh my God,
Yeah.
I get so fucking emotional talking
Honestly,
about everything right now.
I think, like, all of it was emotional just because of the scale of it. And, as somebody who's been there since there was only,
Right.
8 to 10 teams, and you played every single team to
Right.
where it is now. But also, I think it's just, at the end of the day, there's a lot of overwhelming support from the countries that have been there from the beginning towards the countries that are coming in now.
Right.
And just in general, a lot of support. Like, I think one of the most moving moments for me was when Ukraine stood up and they went to do their round, and they got a standing ovation from every single other team.
Yeah.
I thought that was really powerful, and I thought it showed, in my opinion, it showed the power of sport.
Yep. So that was a conversation with Shade outside of the gym at Worlds. And I really do. I like that, the power of sport. I've always been thinking about the power of art. And here, it was just great for an athlete to really draw my attention to the power of sport, that pursuit of excellence, the drive to reach the limit of your personal ability and then to test that ability against those who are around you. And of course, in team sports, you have that added component of learning to identify, your roles and responsibilities within a group and to develop the team chemistry and dynamic. And that takes physicality and sport to another level and adds this whole other component. But in both the personal performance and the collective team experience, there is within the world of sport another language, a language that doesn't revolve around words or around communication in that way. And that exploration of personal power through discipline and training and instruction and competing and winning and losing and falling and rising and risking. It's the magic of sport, I guess, in my opinion. And it reminded me of how this all got started for me, this particular journey and projects 2 years ago. I got into a van with a group of athletes, and I had this epiphany, because I've toured for years in vans with artists and musicians. And when we're on our way to a festival or on a tour, when we're in the van, we're talking about songs and set lists. And here I was in a van with these athletes, and they're all talking about play calls and strategies. As musicians, we get to the festival and we step out on stage. These athletes get to their tournament and they step out on the court. And listening to them in their van, it was completely different and exactly the same. And it was beyond even that surface or the superficial level of comparison that I had my third epiphany, which was the value of a dream. Because dreams come in all shapes and sizes and colors and complexity. And some dreams burn bright for a moment and others are a slow burn over decades. But surrounded by people who are choosing to pursue and build and chase and refine dreams, it comes with this question as you watch people navigate life in this way. What is your dream worth to you? That's going to be section 3. Hang on. The value of a dream. What's it worth? What is your dream worth to you? What would you sacrifice? What would you invest? How cheaply would you sell out your own dream? Keep putting it off, keep leaving it at the bottom of the to-do list. And to clarify, in this context, a dream is not just like some whimsical fantasy or idle daydreaming. I mean, you have a dream. You know, climbing Everest, or you want to surf Nazaré, Portugal, or trek the Pacific Trail, sail across the Atlantic, learn to play a guitar, rebuild a classic car, write a book, book a gig as a public speaker, start your own business. You know what I mean? Like, there's as many different dreams in this world as there are people. So it isn't about what kind of a dream, but it's like, you know, no matter how seemingly big or small, the dream, and this is my definition at least, is an idea that excites you. And we know the difference between a dream and an idea by how it makes us feel. At least this is my understanding. You know, for example, I've said for 30 years, I'd like to go skydiving. But I still haven't done it. And I remember, again with Epiphanies, but I remember one day we were on our family trip around the world. We spent a year traveling as a family, and it was on that trip. We were in New Zealand at, I believe we were driving into Thopo, it looks like Taupo. I think they pronounce it Thopo, New Zealand. We were driving in, and the sky was just filled with parachutes. They must have, planes, must have been a number of planes dumped all of their, people skydiving at the same time. And we quickly pulled over. There was this rest stop on the side of the road, and we all piled out. And each of us laid on a picnic table in this little rest stop, and we watched like 30 or 40 people floating down towards us in all of their brightly colored parachutes. And it was amazing, and it looked fun, and I'm sure it was scary and exciting. And I realized in that moment, like I had been talking by that point for a decade or more about, someday I want to jump out of a plane, I want to go skydiving. But I realized realizing that it did look cool, I didn't really care if I ever did that. Like, if I really, if that was my dream, I would have made it happen. And it's a few $100. It's an afternoon or a day of your life or something. Like, I 100% could have made that happen. But I realized it was just an idea that I like to talk about. And if it absolutely dropped into my lap, sure, I'd jump out of a plane in a parachute. I'd totally do that. But in terms of invest in it, make time for it, prioritize it, get it up off the bottom of the list. No, it wasn't actually a dream. It was just an idea. And I thought, okay, if that's my working kind of definition, a dream is not just a cool idea. It's an idea that's cool to you because of how it makes you feel. You're excited or you're terrified maybe. It fills you with anticipation. And for some reason that you may understand or may not, this particular idea is beyond exciting. Like, there may be 100 different reasons you could think of why it'll never happen, couldn't possibly happen, but still it excites you and you can't stop thinking about it. And the dream of making this documentary about dodgeball, this On the Line, I mean, I've never produced a documentary before. I've made hundreds of videos. I've written hundreds of songs and written tons of short stories and poetry and articles. And I wrote a book. I've written albums and produced albums and events, but I've never told a story in this specific way. And my confidence, if you would, to tackle this new form of storytelling comes largely from one of the worst experiences of my life. And the worst experience of my life wasn't because of the people necessarily. This was many years ago. I was living in Winnipeg and I was touring with a band called the Weird Sisters. Well, I wasn't part of their band. They were a really famous lesbian folk group out of Winnipeg. At the time, they were just well known. They'd written some great songs, had produced some fantastic albums. They just needed a guitar player for a couple tours. And I was not the guitar player I am today. And I was not the guitar player that they needed. But I was all they had. And that tour, it changed what I write songs about. And honestly, it even changed the point of songwriting. I know I've told this story before, but so I'll keep it simple. You know, we're driving. I'm an acoustic guitar player, and which is how I applied, like how I auditioned for their band. I'm just an acoustic guitar player. That's what you need. I played 2 or 3 acoustic songs, and the lead singer's like, okay, yeah, great, show up. We're gonna, first rehearsals on Tuesday night. But then they really wanted an electric guitar player, and the person that they had play on all of their albums was the best electric guitar player in Winnipeg, one of the best in the country, I would argue. And so I can't play his parts. I literally physically at that time could not play those parts. And in fact, I'm not an electric guitar player. So even now, though I'm a vastly better guitar player than I was at that time, I'm still not an electric guitar player. So I couldn't play those parts. And that was frustrating for them and for me. I could never be what they wanted, what they felt like they needed. And along the way on that tour, I would have been at the time what they would call a singer-songwriter, and they were like a folk group. So the way that language or terminology kind of played itself out at the time was, I'm singing the songs that I write for myself. That was it. And they're doing the same thing, but they're, as a group, are writing, and they're often writing about all kinds of different subjects, environmental things, deals, songs about other people's stories, folk music. And one of the sisters on that trip was just like, looked at me, and we're driving down the road in the motorhome. She was just like, you know what I don't like about you singer-songwriters? It's just like, oh, me. Can't you get over yourself long enough to write about someone or something else? And everybody laughed, including me. It was because it was funny, and it was also too true. And when I got back to Winnipeg and went back to my own thing, I remember kind of looking at my catalog of music, and I was like, oh my God, I really do just write about myself. And I probably thought at the time, if I had to write from my own experience, that was the only thing I, had any authority to write about, and realizing, man, you could write about anything in this world. And so my next album, which was called Tribe of One, man, I was writing about Canada. I was writing about politics. I was writing about growing older, and, your friends are getting older, and so are you, but sometimes the dream is still the same, but you're not 20 anymore. And it was lots of different thoughts and ideas. I'd been part of different protests, and so writing a song like Democracy in Drag, and there were just all of these different bigger themes. So it changed, that tour and that experience changed what I wrote about. Certainly I looked at myself and I was like, Rick, you gotta learn how to play this guitar. And I really applied myself and learned how to play it. But I remember in that process, only a few months after that tour was over, I started to do my next album, which was called Now is the Winter of Our Discontent. And I'm in Winnipeg, in my basement. It is literally winter. I don't have a band anymore. MJ was my business partner, musical partner at the time, still is. And she was touring with other bands. So she would leave for a month or two at a time to go on tour with somebody else. And then maybe she'd come back and she'd pop over and listen to what I'd done so far. But really, I'm in this basement, my cold, kind of drafty basement in Winnipeg by myself in the dark of winter, in the cold of winter, making this record. And I remember the one night I wanted an electric guitar part on this song. And I'm not an electric guitar player, but there's nobody else. And I remember sitting there with this guitar, electric guitar. I'm engineering the album, I'm producing it, I'm playing everything by myself. So I remember sitting there going like, I can't do a guitar solo. And it was just all by myself having this conversation. And I remember out loud saying, Rick, can you communicate something emotional with this instrument that will add something to this song? And I remember in that way, I was like, yeah, okay, that I could do. Here, you know what? Let me see if I could find a clip of that and just show you what I'm talking about. I do something more than just play whole notes with distortion. But the idea is I stand behind that. Can I communicate something emotional, which is what the song needs, that would set a tone or a mood, and it would help add something to this music? And I believe, yes, I can. Was it like anything else I've ever heard? No. And at the time, it was kind of the best I could do with the equipment, with my skill level, whatever. And so I feel like that was pretty pivotal in terms of coming to the realization, or to the moment where I could look in the mirror and say, can I do this? Yes. Will I do this? Yes. Is it a risk? For sure. But once you start investing in your dream and going like, I think it was G.K. Chesterton who said something like, if something is worth doing, or if a job is worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. Like, if it's worth doing and you're the only person there, and the best that you can do is still a bad job, well, if it's worth doing and the only thing you can do is a poor job, then it's worth doing poorly. And I find that has been really motivating and empowering for me. Just going, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to even be great. You just got to be willing to take a risk. And so I feel like, with this documentary and this moment, and about dreams and the value of a dream, it's like, can I tell a story about the power of sport through the documentary film lens of storytelling? Yes. Will it be like every other documentary? Who knows? Will it be like any other documentary? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Can I tell a story? Yes, absolutely. And I think, I invest in my dreams because of the way they make me feel. I think you probably do too. And I love that. And I think, it is when you start investing in your dream because of the way it feels, and time flies. You look up and it's already noon, or it's mid-afternoon, and you wonder where the day went. That's such a good clue. That's such a good indicator that you're doing the right thing. And in the same way, I find these dodgeball players and these athletes the same. They talk for hours, they review videos, they do group chats as teams to discuss strategies, they travel to tournaments, spending their own money. These are they're taking time off work. They do everything they do because of how the way sport makes them feel. And in that storyline, then sport becomes so much more than throwing and catching and running. It's an avenue to personal power and expression. It's a pathway to excellence and accomplishment. And along the way are moments of discouragement and defeat and frustration and exhaustion, because dreams aren't fluffy, fancy, puffy clouds and sugar bomb raindrops. Dreams are hard work, probably harder work than what you do for work, which is why so many people are all talk and no walk. Dreams are hard. They're really, really freaking hard. And if your dream is like me skydiving, you're never going to do it. You're just going to lay there and go, that looks like that would be really cool if it all fell into my lap, which is never going to do. And it comes down to a question, I think. What is your dream worth to you? Because some people sacrifice everything for their dream. And I love meeting those people. I love, getting into a room full of people and you meet some strangers, and then, I just ask better questions these days. I don't ask, what do you do for a job or whatever? Because half the people are just working at a job they're not really passionate about. They're just doing it because that's what they have to do to make, rent and mortgage and whatever. What do you do when you're not at work? What really turns your crank? What turns you on? What gets you excited? Whatever actual words I would use to ask those kind of questions, that's when you meet somebody and their eyes light up and they just start going and they start talking. And I don't even, half the time I don't know what the crap they're talking about in terms of, I don't know anything about the subject, but their passion for the subject is awesome. And that's what I love. And other people, man, they will give up their dream for Netflix. They will give up their dream for a sugary snack. They will give up their dream just so they can blend in and never stand out. Could we all have an epiphany about that? Those people, hopefully not you or me, but people all around us who are willing to give up on their dream because They'd choose to watch a crappy TV show after supper rather than train or learn or practice or play or whatever. They'd rather eat sprinkled donuts instead of a healthy meal that could fuel their run or their bike ride. And driving in that van full of athletes, I realized not them as athletes and not them as, dodgeball players or whatever it was, but I'm like, this is my herd. These are my people, the ones that sacrifice everything in the pursuit of their dream. And the dreams are as different, as we are from each other. But the pursuit, the struggle, the investment, that is something I can absolutely relate to. And I think if many of you out there, I know you would know exactly what we're talking about. Your thing is not my thing, nor vice versa, but you get old enough to realize, man, this is the people I need to surround myself with. There are certain people in my life, certain other musicians and artists, and I haven't seen some of them for years. And every once in a while, I don't know what I'm picking up in the universe or whatever, but I'll just have this idea and I'll either find their email address or I'll find them online somewhere. And I'll just send them a private note and I'll just be like, I don't know what's going on in your life. I don't know how your career is going. I don't know how the music's going or the albums or whatever it is that you're working on, but I'm just glad you're out there. Knowing that you're out there, that you haven't given up. I'm sure it's difficult. I'm sure it's hard. But if you're having a moment, one of those moments where you ever feel like packing it in, giving up, giving in, I just want you to know that knowing you're out there, making the world a better place is exciting for me. I'm excited that you're out there doing it. I appreciate that you're out there doing it. Don't give up. Every once in a while, I'll do that because I think there's so many reasons for us to pack it all in and to choose Netflix over the dream, to choose a snack over what it's going to take to actually be excellent at something. And I remember my father, he passed away many years ago now, very suddenly from one of these stupid cancers that exists in our world just because of environmental things. And my dad, now he had this massive shop, massive shop on his property, with the property that I grew up on. And honestly, I kind of hated that shop for myself. It was the shop is where I went to feel awkward and weak and stupid. I didn't build motors. I didn't build furniture and woodworking stuff. I changing oil in my vehicle back in the day was a big deal for me. And even though I could do it, I hated it. I hated getting oil and grease under my fingernails. I hated everything about it. And so I never really liked that shop. And so my dad passes away. I get on the plane. I go back to this little town. And I remember that night, first night back in the property, my mom went to bed. And I walked out across the yard and I went into the shop. And I turned the lights on and like it would have been, because he passed so suddenly, he was just in the middle of, 5 or 6 projects in this massive shop. And one table's filled with parts from a motor. Who knows which motor of which vehicle? There's a lawnmower pulled apart over here, and there's some kind of a vehicle over there. And then there's just this other engine block hanging from the big winch over here. And you're just like, I don't even know what's going on. And I remember saying out loud, so what were you dreaming up here? And I started bawling my eyes out. And I realized this wasn't, the shop wasn't about me. The shop was about my dad. And if I had realized, if I'd put it that way, I'd never even thought about it that way. I don't know why it came out of my mouth that way. But this was where he went to dream. He was going to combine, this massive old earth mover with the hydraulics from a garbage truck that he bought over here. And he would convert this stuff and he'd paint it all up and he would sell it. And it was mostly just his brain, the way he worked. And that was his creative outlets. And if I had looked and recognized the shop, that was what it was, what are you dreaming up now? I could have gone out there every time I visited him and I could have said, hey, what are you dreaming up now? And in the context of this is your dream that you're investing in and how do you break it down and how do you see, I could have appreciated how his brain worked, what he saw, how he saw these things working together, what inspired that in the first place, where he was going to get, the technical know-how or whatever to tackle that challenge or that problem. And I didn't. And if I had known how to look at that for him, then I would have been able to say that, when he came to visit me, this is what I'm dreaming up. And we could have done that comparison. Maybe mine was about albums and tours and events that I was producing. And for him, it would have been projects and motors and creating furniture and building different things. And that would have been so amazing. And I throw that out there because I think for all of us, we're looking for our people. We're looking for those people that are going to inspire us and keep us going when we want to give in and give up. And to find that herd, to find your herd, and maybe I'm thinking about Sid the Sloth from that Ice Age animation. I'm pretty sure there was a tagline like that. That movie's got to be 15 or 20 years old probably. But, where he was like, I got a weird herd or something. I feel like something's coming into my mind. And it's true enough. It is weird. You find yourself getting into a van in the dark, in the rain, to run and catch the ferry so that you can go, with a group full of people to a gym somewhere in Vancouver where they're setting up nets and they're taping out lines for courts so that everybody can pursue and play this game that they love. And there's an old dude, and there's me with my cameras and my bag trying to figure out how to tell a story with video and music, and we're all just living the best life we can. I love it. I love it, man. I love it. That's my epiphany. Find your herd. Find your people that are going to not let you trade it in and pack it all in for some stupid thing. Your dreams got to be worth everything for you. And that's it for this episode. I love my little, this idea that, this is my epiphany, that, being creative, it's a mindset, it's a lifestyle, it's that thing that produces the energy that empowers us and the resiliency and the confidence in our lives to face the challenges that we each face. And it's that process that creates momentum, and it's that momentum that I'm hoping to share with you and get back from you through these episodes. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please feel free to leave a comment or ask a question. And remember, you are capable of infinitely more than you've ever given yourself credit for. Stop doing that. Stop undermining yourself and give yourself the credit, the infinite credit that you deserve. Okay, that's it. Seriously. Until next time.